Really happy that that Ruben is here to join us today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his mining projects, and so we'll get a little bit of a window into more, I guess, deeper. We can go down deeper into the discussion about mining in Greenland and what is going on there, because this was very much a part of our discussion yesterday, but we only hit it like on the surface. We know there's a lot of mining, but this gives us a lot more context. So maybe if you can just start by telling us a little bit about the current project you have right now with Malmberg and
Malmberg and the molybdenum.
Molybdenum.
Yeah.
So yes, if you can just go give us some.
Thank you for the invite and thank you for your time. So I guess Greenland is an important part of the Arctic, so it's good that you have a presence there. The project is a project in Central East Greenland. It's the mineral that we're mining, or we intend to mine, is called molybdenum. Molybdenum is a metal that when you mix it with steel, it makes it harder. And it adds strength, durability, and usually mix it in very small percentages. The interesting thing about this project is that it's a world-class project. It's a project that has over $100 million spent. It's not in production yet. And it's a project that can supply 6% of the global demand. The world consumes roughly 600 million pounds of molybdenum, and this project will be producing like 30 million pounds. Interestingly enough, every continent in the world is self-sufficient with their own resources except Europe. Europe consumes 25% of the global supply and produces zero. Greenland, which makes it very interesting because they have a very interesting deposit right next to their backyard that they could secure for the next 20 years at this point, and we think it's going to go probably to 35 because it's glacier ablation positive. As a glacier melts, we're finding more molybdenum, which is in one way unfortunate, in another way fortunate, overall unfortunate. This could be, Greenland is part of Europe, is an associate member, used to be a full member, and the Greenlandic citizens are actually EU citizens through Denmark, through the agreement with Denmark. So this could supply 25% of Europe's global consumption for the next 25 years at this point. The challenges are that it's Greenland and it's not Canada, in the sense that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the support from the government. We don't have what we have in Canada, which is the so-called flow-through shares, which in one way it was a significant contributor to the development of the resource sector in Canada. As you know, for those of you who don't know flow-through shares, these are shares issued by Canadian corporations where the investor, whether it's a private individual, a fund, or a corporation or trust, can buy those shares, or common shares, with the same rights as the rest of the common shares issued by the corporation, and can write off 100% of their investment against any taxable income. So instead of paying taxes to CRA, you buy flow-through shares and you don't pay. Then you'll pay taxes whenever you sell your shares at a lower bracket, and the idea is that the companies will perform and you'll make money, and then the government at the same time, the treasury, will increase their revenue, the revenue if the projects work. So it's been an incredible story in Canada. So these type of things where government has to somehow intervene, we need it there, because the hard dollars to raise at the beginning of most of the projects, they're early stage. So that will help. At this point, the project is on a permitting stage, which means we're expecting to get an exploitation license. We right now have an exploration license within the next 15 months, and then we'll raise CapEx, which is on the order of $700 million. We will employ roughly, at the first 2 years of construction, roughly 500 Greenlandic, mainly Greenlandic people. We're planning to train them in the university. Actually has an incredible program where they open a mining school, and they are very focused on the needs of the economy. So we will train them in that school, and as time passes, they'll also take part of managerial positions. Once it's in operation, we'll probably be using 300 people. The project will probably contribute to $35 million on taxes to the Greenlandic government, which is a lot. Just so you guys know, Greenland spends roughly $70 million on exploration a year, while Denmark collects in taxes roughly $2 billion a year. So it's a 0.04% of the tax collected. So if they were to implement flow-through shares there, it would be a very small amount for the Danish crown to just to give up, and then maybe they'll make money. Anyway, that's just my view. So the project, we hope to be permitted in 2 years or 15 months. The project was permitted 10 years ago. It was going to be a mine, but then it was owned by a Canadian company who at the end sold for $3.2 billion, had other projects, not only these, to a major European company, and then molybdenum prices collapsed. Well, so that's basically the project.
That's fascinating. And so are you still seeking investment for the project? And from all over, and who?
Yeah, we are a reporting issuer in Canada. We're a Canadian company, which a reporting issuer is actually a public company but not listed in an exchange. So we report, MD&As, financials, relevant events, and so we've been able to raise money. We're a small shareholder base at this point, and we're seeking for some money to conclude the permitting. It's small money, and then we'll be looking for capex. We've been talking to major financial institutions and funds and government, quasi-government funds that are interested on this project. So the big money is easy to get, the small money is not so easy to get.
Fascinating. So you when you were referring to Canada and all the infrastructure, that's the southern part of Canada. So and one of the challenges is here in the Canadian North is the high cost of producing minerals and so its value on the market. And I'm wondering, can you give a little bit of a lay of the land in terms of how difficult or easy or connected it is to get goods to global markets from the various mines? Yeah.
So when you work in the Arctic or any part in a remote area, you really need to have a very good project. And what that means is that the operating cost has to be low. The grade of the mineral has to be pretty high compared to the average in order to offset all the conditions that you're not going to have there, like infrastructure, energy. What we're planning to do, and this was part of our optimization phase in 2018, and has been done in the Arctic in various mining projects, is build most of the infrastructure in low-cost jurisdictions like South Korea, Turkey, put them on barges and bring them to tidewater. We're only 20 kilometers from tidewater. So we'll have the secondary, tertiary crushers, the plants, power plants, the offices, main offices on the barges on tidewater will be connected to the mine. So this, from the optimization in 2008 feasibility study to the 2018 optimization, it was like a 35% cost reduction just by bringing that idea. Canadian mines have done that in the Arctic, many times. So that's one way of solving it. The other way on our advantage is that this project specifically is 3-4 times higher grade than the average grade in the market. So that helps us a lot. The fact that we're close to tidewater, because you mine a lot of volume of rock. We're mining like 30,000 tons of rock a day. So if you can transport that, transport costs can be more than 50% of your OPEX in this type of operations if you're too far away from the next meal or the next. So we're lucky that we're next to the water. So it's all about technology, and it's all about good engineering and good ideas that can offset these deficiencies on infrastructure mainly.
Nice. And so how do you see then the role of the Greenlandic government itself, and then maybe also then I guess relationship to Denmark in terms of supporting infrastructure investment, but also even supporting the message about Greenland as a place to invest and the mining potential there to the world and kind of on a global scale.
that you need success. You need, money will flow whenever there's returns. Not going to flow for nothing. I mean, there may be some government intervention at the beginning that will ease things and, like the flow through, but if the projects are not successful, it's not going to work. The interesting thing about Greenland is that there's a lot of minerals. It's a similar story as Newfoundland and Labrador, similar geology. So it could be on the Yukon territories. Could be a similar story, but there's got to be money invested. So there's one Canadian mine that started operating, world-class mine 6 months ago called Hudson Resources. It's got a 100-year mine life operations, and so that's going to be the first kind of. We'll see how a lot of people put money there, and we'll see how things go. Obviously, a lot of these projects are price dependent. So if the price is right of the mineral, then the projects will start moving. There's also a lot of money in the quasi-sovereign banks. The Nordic Investment Bank and the European Investment Bank have strategic money just focused for Greenland. They need to develop that country. Denmark the crown just put some money on the airports there because China wanted to step in and the US didn't want. And so there is money coming in, but at the end of the day, you got to see returns. If you don't see returns, it's not going to work. And I think you will see because there's very, very good projects and very good assets.
And so just to continue on with that a bit, I mean, I have my take because I've seen Greenland out and about. But do you feel that Greenland is doing a good job, or how do you sense in terms of what is about the world and the world knowing Greenland and knowing what Greenland has to offer? And I'm just I know in terms, and they've opened there's there's Greenlandic representation now in Washington D.C. and this kind of thing. Are there trade consulates anywhere, or what's kind of the relationship?
They are starting. I mean, you saw that Donald Trump was very interested in buying Greenland, which it's at the beginning people thought it was a crazy idea, but actually it's not so crazy. And the fact of buying is crazy, but the fact of taking a significant position in terms of economic activity is not crazy because A, they need the strategic location for the military. That B, there's a lot of resources and proven resources. I'm talking about resources that are in what we call the National Instrument 4311, which is our standard of disclosure in Canada, and it's been a model worldwide. They're there, so the very low degree of error, and we know they're there. So we just need money to take them out. And so somebody's going to do it. So if whether it's the Chinese or whether it's the Canadians, so yeah, I think there's a lot of room. I mean, the U.S. just opened an embassy, a consulate. It's reporting to the one in Copenhagen, but it's there. And there was a treaty after Trump. There was a treaty done by the State Department of the U.S. and the government of Greenland to fly with the highest technology and map the entire country again with technology, military technology from the U.S. So there's a lot of things under the ground happening that people don't know. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of potential that to make money and for people to have a better life at the end of the day, because they do need to get out of the fishery stuff because it's not enough. Yeah. Their economy is based on grants from the crown from Denmark. Roughly $700 million a year with 56,000 people, so they need to start making money, and so I think the resources are going to be the next step. Yeah.
One of the conversations that we had yesterday when we had a minister from Greenland, and we also had the member of Parliament Yvonne Jones, and to ask and inquire about. If they see the benefits or interest in, so Canada maybe opening its own representation in Nuuk, and whether Greenland had considered having, even though Inatek Holm Olsen, who represents Greenland to North America, he actually has his office in D.C., and so there's so much going on in the U.S., he doesn't really quite make it here very often, and that's understandable. And so the idea of actually having representation here, and in terms of trying to build out the mining sector and attract investment? And do you see these kind of relations
Very important.
important and helpful?
Very important. I mean, the U.S. with the delegation there, they had it many years ago, but they're reopening it with a totally different approach, which is an economic approach. Greenland is still kind of part of the kingdom of Denmark. I mean, I'm not an expert on the political arena there, but there's clearly a strong correlation. And they are, for example, in the mining projects, even though they have autonomy, the arbitration courts are in Denmark. So that provides a lot of certainty on the legal framework. However, if you deal with the petroleum branch or the mineral branch in Greenland, you'll be dealing with super highly skilled people, just like in Canada. Like you'll be dealing with experts, and it'll be just very, very comfortable for any first-class company to operate there. So yeah, I think government intervention is important, and I think usually the U.S. is the one that makes these first steps, and then other people follow.
And then everyone else follows.
Yeah, so I think it will happen.
Good. I'm just going to open it up and see if anyone has any questions they want to ask Ruben about mining. Yeah.
Ruben, how long do you think the permitting process will take you?
So first of all, to get to even applying to the permitting process, you need to have like a lot of work. Like you need to get to a point where you have a feasibility study, you've drilled, you have a resource. So in this case, it's $100 million of work and 20 years of modern mining. So we there. Once you're there, then you'll probably need a couple of years. So we already like 6 months or a year and a half for us more to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then take us through, if you would, the timing with regard to actually once the technical approvals, the regulatory approvals are received, fingers crossed for you, process from there. The transportation challenge, how are you going to take it out? There's a big project in Nunavut now, Baffinland, that's in long processes with regard to whale and the port, and a little bit more of the technicality is fascinating.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. That's actually all part of the permitting process. They won't, if you don't have the answers to those type of questions, they won't give you the permit. So the way it works, which is a very similar process as it is in Canada, is that you present what is called the terms of reference of the environmental and social impact assessment, which is basically a generic view of, the studies, and then they put it open for consultation for agencies in Greenland and people. You have to submit documents in Danish, in Greenlandic, and in English. Once they approve the terms of reference of the EISIA, then there's all sorts of rules that start applying. So how are you going to, in a much more detailed way, how are you going to do this, how are you going to do that, where, how are you going to transfer, what type of, how much fuel consumption are you going to have, what, the wind, the birds, the animals, people. So then you start asking all those questions in more detail. And then you have to do environmental studies, you have to do social community meetings. In our case, we only have one community 200 kilometers southeast. We're lucky, but some other projects have 20 communities. And everybody has to kind of be in favor. Now, Greenland is very supportive for mining because they all want to move on. So, but yeah, it's a very rigorous process, and there's other considerations, for example, uranium. If there's uranium on what you're mining, it becomes completely a different process, because it falls under other type of regulations in the European Union. And so yeah, you have to answer all those questions before you get permitted. Once you get permitted, you answer all those questions. There's like 5 or 6 different regulatory agencies. Some are in Denmark, some are in Greenland. Mainly the environmental ones are in Denmark, and the technical ones are in Greenland. Sorry. So once you get the permit, then you're going to have X amount of time to start operations, and then and you have to start operations. If not, you can get an extension. If you don't start operations at one point, you lose a license. So, the licenses are 30 years, renewable 20 more, so 50 years, the exploitation licenses.
How are you going to get the stuff out?
So we're 20 kilometers from the tidewater. So we're going to have a main crusher on site. It's actually a mountain. It's surrounded by a glacier. The glacier has been retreating 30 meters in the past 10 years, and we're forecasting another 60 meters in the next 10 years. So our resources, we are re-estimating our resource right now based on glacier ablation. But anyway, you'll crush the rock there, then we'll have a tunnel that will take it to a conveyor and hydraulic ore transportation to tidewater. And then we have secondary crusher, tertiary crusher on tidewater, and the plants on the offices. We'll have the tailing pond like 5 kilometers away from tidewater, and then we'll have a harbor there. And the harbor, we'll ship them to, there's what we mine is a metal called molybdenum sulfide. Then you got to take the sulfide out to leave the molybdenum concentrate. So the sulfide, it's a very contaminating process to do. So we won't do that in Greenland. We'll do it in Rotterdam, and they have roasters there. So that's where we're going to take it by ship. All the shipping routes, all the fuel consumption, all the dust that we're going to use, create when we blast the rock, and every single thing has to be documented and has to be within standards before you get the permit.
Okay, well, let's look at Greg and then we'll go to Drew again. Yeah.
Just a really quick question, Ruben. Can you talk a little bit about your investor base and potential for future foreign investment?
So as any other mining project or any other initiative, when you start, is friends and family, right? And then you try to make it work. And in this case, we acquired a project that was pretty developed on the junior space. So we got a couple of institutionals, and the board controls 50% of the project. We only 3 board members. And then we have, I'll say, so 50% the board, at this point, 30% institutionals, and then 20% individuals. Now, once we get permitted, it's completely going to change. Once we get permitted, we're going to probably go to 70% institutionals, whether it's government funds or private equity, and 30% of the rest.
Drew, you had a follow-up question?
Well, I just wanted, it's a Canadian company. I don't know how much operations you have, or your finances are based here anyway. And I think equals here later. It's a complex regulatory process, but that's not unusual, especially in the Arctic. If you were doing this in Nunavut, in the Canadian Arctic, would it be easier or harder?
It's all about the asset. The first question you got to ask is if you have same assets, same grade, same, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be easier at this point in Canada than it is there. I don't think so. Because we're close to tidewater, so it doesn't really matter. Once you put on the ship, it's very cheap. Transport is very cheap. So no, it wouldn't be easier. If you copy paste the project, 20 kilometers, same grade, same story, it wouldn't be easier. It'll be the same. The regulatory framework is literally the same. The only thing it'll be easier maybe is the government interventions. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the regulatory framework, in that part of Canada, but if there's government, like in Quebec, that they'll help you with the energy or things like that, then of course it'll be easier. But if there's no government intervention, it's the same.
Well, the different part of it though seems as because here it's a negotiated piece, right, in terms of equity and who has what and who owns these things, where in Greenland it's a nation, and so it's a national project that way, right? I think maybe that part might be quite different in negotiating with who is part of the project and at what capacity, and because there's a lot of discussions with projects here.
But the only thing I'd say is that goes kind of back to what Toby was talking about earlier, in terms of the complexity of the governance process. It doesn't sound that different.
Would it be of interest to mining corporations to actually partner with federal agencies for
that be viewed as a burden, or maybe even just offsetting costs? I know if the price is right, but really, is that of interest to mining corporations of having, they need to support or staging or even, usage of facilities?
It'd be being very positive. It'd be really positive. This is, I can tell you, my previous mining project I did was a TSX listed venture. And it was a very interesting combination because the government was involved, but also the people. We basically did this project, and I'll try to give you an example as to why it's very important and positive, your idea. There was a remote area in Colombia in the middle of nowhere, a community of 200 people. They didn't want to give their mining concessions because they were already, everybody took advantage of them, other public companies, and they gave them nothing. I came there, did a deal with them, and I gave them 30% of the public company. I had the World Bank backup in some respect, which is a little bit the government intervention. I put a very strong board. I put a former Minister of Canadian Federal Minister, a former bank chairman, and then we gave these guys, we put them into an association, gave them 30% of the company, 2 seats on the board. They've never even been to their main city. Everything with the support of a government agency behind. To make the story short, we raised money in the capital markets, and 2 years later we sold it for 15 times the money. So these guys made close to $100 million, the poor guys. But the government agency made money, these guys made money, public sector make money, shareholders at TSX. So yeah, everybody can have a benefit. And if I wouldn't have had the backup of a name like the World Bank saying, they have a mining division saying, this is their social ingredient here, we're going to help people, but at the same time, it can be a profitable project and improve people's quality of life. So yeah, I think that's the ideal situation, but it happens very rarely.
I think I'll wrap it up unless someone else has one last question. But thank you so much.